Hello. YouTube, hello.
Hardtack,
There we
ship's
go.
biscuits, molar breakers, sea biscuit, galette, or worm castles.
Oh,
They were
God.
all one and the same thing. Whether during the Civil War or beneath the Jolly Roger, these little pieces of overly dry, dense bread were
Jesus.
essential to the diet of any soldier or sailor. And it's that latter one that we'll be talking about today. So thank you to the Great Courses Plus for sponsoring this video.
Oh my God,
as we
the
make
Team
ship's
Aqua
biscuits
Pikachu.
and grog and sail into the world
The Team
of
Aqua
sailors
Pikachu.
and pirates. This
Aw,
time
that's
on
so
Tasting
cute.
History.
That's adorable. I love it.
So I'm often asked where the ideas for these episodes come from, and I thought this was actually a good one to kind of explain because it's a really circuitous route.
It is, yes.
Yes.
The most adorable eco-terrorist.
Patreon patrons who goes by the name of Etrigan about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings and the lambus bread and cram that he has in those books and how they were probably based on the hardtack that he had eaten during World War I. So there you go, episode on hardtack. But we decided to kind of narrow in on ship's biscuits, which were the earlier form of hardtack that was served on sailing ships. Though Townsend's has actually done kind of the quintessential video on ship's biscuits, so I will put a link to that in the description. But we do cover some of the same
The next time we
history
do
as
a
he did,
watch-along
just for
stream chat,
context. But I was really
remind
looking
me to add
cover new
Townsend's
history that
videos
he
because
didn't
holy
cover
shit.
in his video. That took us to pirates.
Ah,
so
pirates.
thank you to
I
Etrigan
believe he
for
does,
inspiring
Zags.
and
I
helping
believe
me
he
with this
does.
episode via your love of Lord of the Rings. Now, Tolkien's bread was.
That's right, because he was still working for Disney around this time, son. You're right. Yeah.
Crawling with maggots once by the time it got eaten.
Ew.
And was so hard that even Benjamin Franklin said, "The ship biscuit is too hard for some sets of teeth."
Oh,
Now, I
Jesus.
looked all over
Yikes.
for a period recipe for hardtack, and I just could not find anything. Maybe it was so simple that nobody ever bothered to write it down. Maybe it's
Dylan
out
did
there.
a
I just
video on
couldn't find
hardtack.
it. But I did
That
find
shit literally
a
sounded
wonderfully
like
detailed
roofing
description of
tiles.
how it was
Oh my
made in
God.
1815 by William Falconer
Oh my
for
God.
His Majesty's Royal Navy. Sea biscuit is a sort of bread much dried to make it keep for the use of the Navy, and is good for a whole year after it is baked. The process of biscuit baking for the Navy is simple and ingenious and is nearly as follows. A large lump of dough consisting merely of flour and water is mixed up together and placed
I heard ship
exactly in the
biscuit as
center
shit
of a
biscuit,
raised
same
platform
Mecca.
where a man
Same.
sits upon a machine called a
Same.
horse and literally rides up and down till the dough is sufficiently
Talk
kneaded.
about stretching a dollar.
One
This is some
man molds the dough
spandex
till it
level
has the
stretching.
appearance of
See,
muffins.
Perso?
Another stamps them
I'm so
on
glad
both
you
sides
remember
with a mark.
B. Dylan Hall's
The
quotes
business
better than
is
I
to
do.
Deposit in the oven 70 biscuits in a minute. The biscuits thus baked are kept in repositories, which receive warmth from being placed in drying lofts over the ovens.
Oh,
till they
that
are
checks,
sufficiently
actually.
dry
That
to be
checks.
packed
Yeah,
into
yeah.
bags without danger of getting moldy. And that last part is essentially why ship's biscuits even exist, because keeping bread from getting moldy on a ship
That's
is
impossible.
darn near
That is
impossible.
that is a
But if
Sisyphean
it's
task.
sufficiently dried,
Good
it can
God.
last up to a year. And later on, when it was used on land, like during the Civil War, it could last indefinitely. There's actually still some hardtack left from the Civil War, and there's a guy on the internet who eats it.
What?
I would not suggest doing that.
No,
but it's kind of
you
a
could not pay
interesting
me
video
enough.
to watch. Anyway, for this recipe, what you'll need is 4 cups or 450 grams of flour, and 1 cup or 235 milliliters or less of water. And that should make either 4 large biscuits or about 8 small ones. They change in shape and size throughout history, so it's really up to you.
That is
Now for the flour used, they use
incredibly
all
dry.
sorts. It could either
Oh,
be
no.
really nice
Oh,
flour
no.
or the worst flour, kind of depending on
The
who is
worst
making
flour.
it at what time and for whom.
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah,
going to be
no,
using
it's
a
so
stone-ground
quality
whole wheat
back
flour,
then
which
was
is rather coarse,
questionable at
because in
best,
Jonas
shall we
Hanway
say, chat.
Esquire's amazingly
Quality
titled
back then was
Abuses in Bread,
questionable
one
at
of the most
best.
injurious practices of our time, and the importance of removing the evil. He says, the flour which biscuit and gingerbread bakers use should be called coarse flour.
Coarse
Now,
flour.
I'm not adding any salt to this recipe because,
Okay.
as Falconer says, it's merely flour and water. And that makes sense because if you've
Right.
ever spent any time on a ship, as I have, you know that everything is salty.
Yeah,
The deck is salty. The food is salty.
overly
You're
salty.
You don't need to add salt.
Yep.
And frankly, if you're looking for flavor, this is not the bread to go with. There are a lot better breads out there. And I'm actually taking a course on the Great Courses Plus that is teaching me all about making some of those breads. The Great Courses Plus is a fantastic subscription, a little bit better. So for a free trial, please visit thegreatcoursesplus.com/. Now let's get back to them biscuits, shall we?
Them
So
biscuits.
take the flour and start adding in the water. I'd start with about half of a cup and begin mixing it in. You want the dough to just come together. The drier, the
so
better.
much less.
Don't feel like you need to use all of the water.
Oh, no.
Once the dough does come together, get to kneading. Now, Falconer describes a man on a machine called a horse riding up and down on the dough to knead it. I don't have that kind of space, so I just use my hands. Knead for about 15 minutes or so. You can't over-knead this bread.
Oh, this is going to be...
so it doesn't crack in the oven.
This is going to be ridiculous, chat.
Next, he says that they are molded into the shape of muffins. And that would be an English muffin.
This is going to be insane.
With a flat top
they're so hard, the only way to make them edibles, put them in stews or wet food. Yeah, no, that checks.
Because they're not going to dry properly.
This is also the time when people put borax in milk to make it last longer.
Insignia or something. I don't have that. So instead, I'm just going to poke holes, which is called docking. And that makes it so it doesn't puff up in the oven.
Yep.
Then set them on a baking sheet and bake at 300 degrees Fahrenheit or 150 Celsius for
3 to 4 hours
until they're dry enough that they easily come off of the baking sheet. Now at this point,
3 to 4 hours,
drier than the humor of an English baker after 2 GMTs.
Hours.
Nothing is more injurious to bread than moisture. Now the term biscuit comes from the French word
Jesus
twice
Christ.
cooked, and that's often what they would do. They would let it cool and then put it back in the oven and let it bake again, or 3 times, or even 4 times. But in the description that we're using, instead they put them in these lofts above the ovens. They would get hot and dry, but not as hot as the oven. So to approximate that, we're going to put it back in the oven at about 200 degrees Fahrenheit or 95 degrees Celsius.
Not that docking, son!
A few more hours. Now, while we want our biscuits dry, we do not need to hold that standard.
That's how these will last longer than even the most talented of men.
All you need is 4 parts water and 1 part rum.
Oh my God.
That was the standard set by Vice Admiral Edward Vernon, who they called Old Grog on account of the old grogram coat that he used to wear.
Interesting.
At this time, sailors, especially in the Caribbean, would get a ½ pint of rum each day for their ration. But Vernon noticed that they were saving that ration up for a few days and then getting plastered. So, to stop that, he watered down the rum and had it doled out twice a day. Now, if you think that rum and water sound just a little boring, don't worry, because the Vice Admiral says that crew members who are good husbandmen may, from the saving of their salt provisions and bread, purchase sugar and limes to make it more palatable to them. And I think I'm a good husbandman, so I'm going to add a little bit of sugar and squeeze in a little bit of lime, and, yeah.
Interesting.
Swirl it around, bottoms up. It's actually really good. Quite refreshing. Yeah. I like that.
All right.
Also, how cool is this
mug?
Yeah,
that mug is badass. I was about to say.
I'll put a link in the description below if you want your own pirate mug.
I would love my own pirate mug. Are you fucking kidding me? Let's go.
Anyway, now that we have our grog in hand, make sure to bedight this video with a hit of the like button as we take a gander what them salty sea dogs might have been enjoying for them victuals.
Hey, laddie.
Now, to find out what pirates ate in the 17th and
Navy
18th
grog,
centuries,
ladies and gentlemen.
You gotta kind of look at what the Navy was eating.
That's incredible.
A lot of pirates came
and
directly
NBs
from
too,
the
yes,
Navy.
and NBs as well.
Luckily for us, the head of victuals and provisions for the Navy was that prolific diarist Samuel Pepys. By the morning, we were come close to the land, and everybody made ready to get on shore. The king and the 2 dukes did eat their breakfast before they went, only to show them the manner of the ship's diet. They eat nothing else but peas and pork and boiled beef. Now, that entry was from 1660, and he must have been so appalled at the limited provisions that a few years later, when it was in his power to actually do something about it, he did expand the
don't tempt me, I might just do that.
For Englishmen, and more especially, seamen love their bellies above everything else, and therefore it must always be remembered in the management of the victualling of the Navy that to make any abatement in the quantity or agreeableness of the victuals is to discourage and provoke them in the tenderest point, and will soon render them disgusted with the king's service than any one other hardship that can be put upon them. So just like me, 17th century sailors would get hangry and up and quit the Navy. That's why I left. I wasn't
in the Navy.
So a few years later, in 1677, Pepys laid
I feel that on getting hangry,
rations,
though.
which included
Good God.
1 pound of good,
I feel
clean,
that, though.
sweet,
I feel that,
sound,
though. Jesus
well-bolted with a
Christ.
horsecloth, well-baked and well-conditioned wheaten biscuit, 1 gallon of beer, 2 pounds of beef killed and made up with salt in England of a well-fed ox for Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, and
Really?
Thursdays.
Wow.
Now, if you think a gallon of beer sounds a little excessive, it was a small beer, so it basically had all the alcohol of like a half a Zima.
Oh
They didn't
God,
make those
who
anymore.
remembers Zima, chat? Oh
Now, Pete's
Jesus.
also laid out some additional foods that crew members
Wow.
could eat on certain days, such as salted English pork,
Uh-huh,
peas, 3 inches of northern sea cod, butter, and cheese. And he promised that no English navyman should ever be given Irish beef, for the Irish meat is very unwholesome, as well as lean, and rots our men. Which explains why
Yikes. Yikes. Oh no. That, yikes. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.
my Irish
Oh
nana
dear.
always ordered her corned beef extra lean. Now, something you'll note missing from this provision is anything to stave off
scurvy. That's my
which
question,
was the
yeah.
scourge of sailing ships. Almost 80 years before, in 1601,
You find that same mug for 40 bucks? Nice one,
Zax. A privateer
Zax.
was basically a pirate who was in cahoots
Let's
with
not
the
talk about the English-Irish relations in the latter half of the second
stumbled upon
millennium. Let's.
lemon juice being a way to combat scurvy. He had
All
four ships.
I'm just gonna quote that one scene from Star Trek: The Next Generation. You already know what this one is. The Irish reunification of 2024. Look, chat, all I'm saying, it's only February. The year is still young.
And the crew of 3 got sick with scurvy, and 1 did not. And it just so happened that that 1 had been drinking 3 spoonfuls of lemon juice each morning. He reported his findings to the British Navy, who then
We're all
proceeded
out
to
here waiting
ignore
for the
them
Bell riots and the
200 years.
unification.
It wasn't until 1795 that the Admiralty finally, against the advice of many physicians, added lemons
That's also true,
to
yes,
the daily
yes.
ration. Crazy. Interestingly enough, those lemons often came from Spain.
Spain, yeah, I was about
And
to
a
say.
few years later, when Spain got into bed with Monsieur Napoleon Bonaparte against England, the lemons dried up, so
You
the
don't
English
say.
started getting limes from the West Indies
Ah.
and became known as limeys. Now, with such a limited diet for the majority
Limeys.
of the crew, the ship's
Okay.
cook really had to get creative, if not with the ingredients.
Look, it's
then
only
with the
February and
names of
everything's already
dishes.
gone
There was
batshit
dog's
insane.
body, which was a sort of peas
What?
pudding, and burgoo or loblolly, which was essentially oatmeal with either molasses or pig fat in it. And there's actually a really good video again from Townsend's on making that, so I'll put a link in the description to that as well.
Oh, I need to
Skilly was just ground up
check that
hardtack with
bird.
pork fat and water, and then lobscouse was basically a meat stew thickened with ground up hardtack. Then there was my
Oh,
favorite,
you don't
dandy
say.
funk, which was again just ground
Dandy
up hardtack
Funk?
with
Hold
fat
on,
and
what was
molasses.
that? Was that the actual fucking name?
A meat stew
Wait,
thickened with
what?
ground up hardtack. Then there was my favorite, dandy funk, which was again just ground up hardtack with fat and molasses.
Dandy Funk.
They do sound pretty
Interesting.
hearty, if not particularly interesting. Though there is one interestingly named dish that actually does sound pretty
Okay.
good. and
Yeah,
that is
no, Bird, that's kind of
salmagundi,
incredible.
which
Holy
was
shit.
like an early Cobb salad. It had fresh meats and greens and a little bit of a dressing.
I do like how Max
hard-boiled
mentions the other
eggs,
food YouTube
sometimes
channels.
some
I know,
onions,
it's pretty
But that
awesome.
was going to be reserved for the captain and his mates. And it's said that salmagundi was actually what the infamous pirate captain Black Bart Roberts ate
yes.
the morning that he went to Davy Jones's locker.
Black
Now,
Bart
despite
Roberts.
these
There he
bland
be.
foods being what most of the crew ate most of the time, especially on long voyages, when they did get to, different ports of call around the world,
Dandy
the
Funk,
food
the
got
new
more
French
adventurous.
electronica
And to learn more about
robot
that,
duo. Oh
we
my
again
God, son.
Go to a great
That's
pirate.
very good. That's very
William
good.
Dampier was originally captain of HMS Roebuck for the British Navy, but then in 1702 he was court-martialed for being cruel to his own crew.
Oh,
and
well,
expelled
that'll
from the
do it,
Navy.
yeah.
So he became a pirate.
That'll
But
do
again,
it.
One of those privateers who, was kind of okay with the British Navy because he would only attack the Spanish. But it was his writings that made him famous because he cataloged everything that he did on his journeys, especially the foods that he came across. In the Bay of Panama, he ate a fruit called avocado pear. The inside is green or a little yellowish and as soft as butter. It is usually mixed with sugar and lime juice and beaten together in a plate. And there you have the first English language recipe for guacamole.
I was
Also,
about
the
to
first
say,
English language use
yo,
of the word
okay.
avocado. In fact,
Wow.
the dictionary
That's
crates it with
cool.
a lot of firsts, including chopsticks and barbecue and cashew and kumquat. And supposedly he came up with the term breadfruit.
Breadfruit.
Some of his
Really?
other interesting writings find his
Interesting.
captain feeding
Really?
sometimes on land turtle, sometimes on sea turtle. Captain Davis found such plenty of land turtle that he and his men ate nothing else for 3 months.
For 3
And he
months?
mentions that flamingos'
Jesus.
tongues are large, having a large knob of fat at the root, which is an excellent bit. A dish of flamingos' tongues is fit
Flamingo?
for a prince's table.
What?
Which is cool because the ancient Roman food writer Apicius basically writes the same thing, so checks out. Also, Dampier talks about taking aboard foods that would last long times on voyages, like coconuts, rice, yams, and potatoes, which are good store to eat at sea. But not everything he was eating agrees with me, like penguin meat, or the extraordinarily sweet, wholesome meat of manatee. Don't you dare, Mr. Dampier.
No! Oh no! Not the manatees. Oh.
My favorite animal, and I would sooner turn to cannibalism than eat a manatee.
Oh.
And turning to cannibalism seems to have been on the table as well.
Why would you? Why would you do
lots
that?
Of stories of pirates and mutineers resorting to cannibalism. And even though
the huge manatee
is full of levity, I am guessing that Dampier was a little worried when his trip to Guam was taking longer than expected. It was well for Captain Swan that we got sight of it before our provision was spent, of which we had but enough for 3 days more.
Yeah.
For as I was afterwards informed, the men had contrived first to kill Captain Swan and eat him when the victuals was gone, and after him, me. This made Captain Swan say to me after our arrival at Guam, "Ah, Dampier, you would have made them but a poor meal." For I was as lean as the captain was lusty and fleshy.
Whoa!
I was as lean as the captain was lusty and fleshy.
This video has just taken turn after turn, and they've all been left turns, chat. What the fuck? I'm putting that in my dating bio. Lusty and fleshy. All right. All right. There is no heterosexual explanation for that. No, Bo, there's not. Lusty and fleshy. All right, chat. You heard it here first. You want to impress a prospective partner? Call yourself lusty and fleshy and see how they react. Oh my
nobody
god!
Ever refers to me as lusty and fleshy. It's not a compliment. Dampier also talks about a lot of excessive drinking, which pirates and sailors alike were notorious for.
So like me on Magfest weekend, I mean, what?
Like, what do you do with a drunken sailor?
What do you do with a drunken sailor? Yeah.
It is the year of the sea shanty, according to TikTok. Though probably by the time this video airs, that will be gone because
teenagers are very fickle.
In Treasure Island, Robert Louis Stevenson wrote, "Double grog was going on the least excuse, and the sailor Edward Barlow was dissuaded from going to sea by his family, knowing how many ill husbands and drunken fellows used to go to sea.
Oh my god.
And that it was a place where many ill vices were in practice.
Really,
but he went anyway, and quickly learned why that beer and rum ration were so looked forward to in comparison with whatever else was on the menu. A piece of hard biscuit cake, or a piece of old salt beef or pork, and maybe both stinking and rotten, having lain in a pickle 1 year or two, and nothing to drink but a little fresh water, many times both stinking and dirty." So can you really blame a pirate when in the pirate haven of Port Royal, Jamaica, they used to buy a pipe of wine, place it in the street, and oblige everyone that passed to drink? A pipe of wine being 126
gallons of
so
wine.
I don't feel that bad about needing another cup of grog with my ship's biscuit. So after
sounds like a party.
Hours, your ship's biscuit or
sounds like a party to me, chat. Goddamn.
If you want to dry it out some more, you can just leave it out for a few hours or days or weeks or months because it lasts forever. But for today, here are our ship's biscuits and grog. And you can tell they're done because...
Oh my god!
I mean... That's crazy. It did break off a little bit, which is
clack,
good.
Clack, indeed. Holy shit.
I'm able to eat these. I worry for my teeth. Let's give it a shot.
Holy. Ooh.
Yeah. That is crispy.
That is crispy.
Crispy and flavorless.
These are roof tiles.
It's just not very good. They did used to break them up and like put them into stews and stuff, like I said, or just dip them into their grog or water or wine.
That is wild.
I mean, wow. That is like... That'll get stuck in your throat.
Oofa.
I can see why Polly want a cracker and not a ship's biscuit.
Smart parrot.
So if you're on Discord, make sure to join the Tasting History Discord where we talk food and history and Pokemon and whatever else we want to talk about.
Oh my god in heaven, that is wild. You definitely just soak those in some liquid beforehand. Jesus Christmas. You are going to shatter your teeth on those. Holy Christ.